everybody receive a copy of last month's minutes?
Move we adopt last month's minutes?
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Very good. Correspondence, we do have a bit of correspondence, of which I would like to discuss, but before I do that, I would like to say, Sean Arno, I believe this is your last meeting with us. You've served the town of Cornwall and the planning board with a stellar performance in engineering advice. You could introduce your replacement, and I think maybe a round of applause for Sean's and gratitude would be in order, and thank you very much for that.
This is Quinn Malarkey.
And Quinn has worked with us on a bit and is also excellent. And it gives me an opportunity to thank the town board, and the town supervisor for granting us the quality of consultants that they have. We rely on them and we get super work from all of them, and I want to thank you guys for that too. And with that, I'll move on to correspondence. I have some correspondence that I will include in the discussion section, because I do have quite a bit of it. So before I move there, resolutions or decisions. Dominic, I'm asking the board to defer the resolution until we've discussed items on the agenda, and then we can move to that, if that's okay.
Yes, of course.
Okay. Discussion. No, I'm sorry. First item on the discussion, I'm going to save the correspondence to the last section of the discussion. I'd like to open up with the work session scheduled for the 19th. Is there a request to change the date of that discussion? Since it is a holiday, is it not, Mary Beth?
It is a holiday.
It is a holiday.
Juneteenth.
So do we have consultants, because generally that's not really a board thing, it's consulting. Do you have any issues or would like to change that date? Or Gary, do you have any suggestions on that?
I was looking for them because if they can't attend, there's no sense having them.
Very good.
Yes, fair enough. I had a question. Is the town hall closed that day?
Yes, it's federal holiday, so we are closed.
Right.
Do you recommend it?
So we don't have to necessarily decide now, but if you circulate amongst yourselves, we could, we have some time to
Yeah,
properly adjust.
right. So,
I'm happy to move it to Friday if you want, but you probably don't need that.
no, Friday would be fine by me. Quinn, would that work for you? Friday, the June, or, I'm sorry, I'm on the wrong date. So that would be June 20th.
So move it to Friday?
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, if that's all right with the board, this would be the, the technical work session that the consultants hold every month. And so that would be moved to June 20th.
June 20th? It is. Do we need to vote on that or something, Dominic, or is that
You just acknowledge it, I think would be fine.
acknowledged by shaking your head? Okay, we'll call that the, what are the bobblehead dollars?
Just to be clear, I mean, so I know we have people in attendance, like this is just for applicants to meet with the consultants. It's open to the public. Board members, of course, are free to attend, and some of you, of course, have attended, from time to time as your schedule permits. No action is ever taken at a work session. We're just providing advice to the consultants as to, how to make sure that they provide proper information for the board to consider.
Yes, and I might add the areas in attendance there, and they get a pretty comprehensive review and an opportunity to make changes in their plans and so forth. It's actually pretty interesting. But thank you, and thank you for changing that date. Okay, with that, we'll go on to Biagini Woods. Help yourself. This is just an information session, so feel free, and we'll call it free-flowing response. That's fine.
Okay,
Come up here.
it's so far away.
If you're back there, you might be guilty. If you're up here, you're safe.
Okay. All right, so I think you all have these packets that we sent out, the visual photos that we had taken for the Biagini Woods project. Okay, so my goal here tonight was to determine which viewpoints you want us to study the proposed condition from. So we had gone around to all of the viewpoints around the site that are shown on the last page of that packet. They're all numbered. The first one is the north point on the thruway. Second one is the south one on the thruway. Third one is from, forget what development that is. Brocala subdivision, looking up towards the proposed development. and then 2 additional locations on the Cornwall High School property. So as you can see in the packets, from viewpoints 1, 2, and 3, there's no chance of seeing the project because of the tree cover and the distance to the project. So our recommendation is to not study a proposed condition because you're really not going to see anything from those locations.
Were there balloons in place at the time of these photos?
No, that was not part of the study, to do a balloon test.
Okay, I was just wondering,
Yeah,
so you're, I mean, that's a conclusion, so.
Okay, sorry.
that's all right. So, but looking at the viewpoint number 4 from the Cornwall Central High School athletic fields, we do believe that we will be able to see the tops of the buildings through the tree cover there. And then from viewpoint 5, you will definitely see the buildings through that location, since the property line is fairly close to that location. So our recommendation is that we do the proposed viewpoint renderings where we actually, we put what the buildings will look like into the photo from those 2 viewpoints.
If I might, were you in the work session with you guys? Did he present this to you guys at the?
No, we didn't.
I'm trying to think about what actually happened. They were at a workshop like a year ago talking about potentially changing the project to senior, but I don't think that there's not been another work session where these particular vantage points were discussed.
So you have not had an opportunity to review this stuff?
Well, yeah, the applicant submitted this in advance. I did a review, but I'm saying that this wasn't discussed at a workshop meeting.
Okay, then we will go to your review if you don't mind.
Sure.
Would this be helpful if we start just? Okay.
Absolutely.
Before we begin the review, can I just ask what project we're reviewing? I mean, how many units are proposed in the layout shown here?
328.
328, and so the applicant's currently pursuing approval for 328 units on this site.
Correct.
Is that true?
Yes.
Okay.
Just like what was
Because we'd
said.
heard another number
Yes.
on another occasion. Is that not on the
No.
table?
We're writing a DEIS document based on the scope that you approved in, I guess, March of last year.
Okay, so the applicant's currently pursuing a scope and scale of the project consistent with the scope, the EIS scope which was set last year.
That, the scope said it was 17 buildings. The plan that I had has 12.
Right, the number of units has not changed. The layout of where the buildings are has changed to move them further away from.
Same number of units in less buildings. Are the buildings taller? So that is relevant to whether or not you can see it from a vantage point. So that's kind of, I mean, I don't mean to cut you off, but I mean, that was.
Not at all.
that's where you're
I just
headed,
want to be
though.
clear where we're
He's already
starting.
been scolded.
That's exactly.
Sorry, yeah, sorry.
No, I appreciate that, and that's where you're headed, I think, and that's where I'm headed as well, because what I have is a layout plan that shows 12 buildings, when the original scoping document had 17. That sketch layout has no number of units written on it, no building height. Obviously, a grading plan hasn't been developed yet, so I think, this board doesn't know, obviously didn't know that the buildings were taller or what height that is, but doesn't know what plan we were talking about because there's no numbers on what we received, didn't have a number of units on it. But also without the board and really without the applicant having the benefit of a grading plan, you don't know the base elevation of the buildings, and if you don't know the base elevation of the buildings, then it's really impossible to be able to conclude at this point where you'd be able to see something. Because you don't know, if you're bringing in fill, the height of the buildings, you're gonna see it from a further location. So I think that it's really too early at this point for you to rule out or for you to make a conclusion that you may or may not be able to see something at this point in the game. I mean, the analysis part is very important, and you're kind of jumping ahead of that a little bit. But I do agree that views 4 and 5 will be the most impacted. Those are the views from the actual high school building and high school property itself. I do agree that those will be the most impacted, but I just think that without a grading plan, I wasn't aware of the height of the building. And we also don't have a clearing plan, so we don't know which trees on that property are coming down, which trees are coming down within the site anywhere. So I don't know which trees are gonna be there or not, and I don't know how tall the buildings are gonna be. So I think it's too premature to make any kind of conclusions about where you'll see these buildings from.
I mean, we just basically looked at the viewpoint picture that was taken here, and you can't see any of the trees in the background beyond where, you know, the vegetation in the front. So, but I understand what you're saying. We can provide the grading plan and the elevations of the buildings and the elevation of where the
I think they
picture
kind of,
was
it kind of all
taken
go
from.
together when you do a review of it.
Okay.
I mean, to be honest, and to be fair, it sounds like there's a revised concept plan, which this board hasn't seen yet. And so, you know, what we have is the adopted scope from March of 2024 that had a particular layout and a plan associated with that. And now there's changes to it, and we're being asked, or the board is being asked, you know, to evaluate the appropriate, you know, protocols for the visual impact analysis for a plan. In all honesty, they haven't seen.
Okay. I mean, the plan that, or the layout that we are using right now is in this, the packet.
I understand,
Right,
but there's
okay.
no details associated with that you would typically see
Okay.
as part of a concept plan, and in terms of including height, as well as how the units are configured and.
So what do you,
All of that.
what do you suggest as our next step be?
Well, I think you should make a submission for the board to consider that would have this revised layout, so they could understand it as it relates to this, but also as it relates generally to the scope as well,
Okay.
because we're dealing with the changed circumstances from what the scope provided.
Okay.
Without any building profiles, I don't know how we're supposed to evaluate view shed impact and bulking.
Okay. So you're looking for a cross-section through the site as to where the buildings are? Would that be
I
helpful?
would ask you to work with the planning board's consultants on the specifics of that part of the plan. I don't think we should dive into the technical details of that tonight, but we definitely need to know how big are the buildings, what is their elevation of the peaks, and also I'm keenly interested in the elevations of these viewpoints.
Great, I'm gonna jump in there.
Please.
I don't think there's any point of doing a viewpoint analysis of number 5 from the ground. There's a 3-story high school right there with glass overlooking that, so if you are doing a viewpoint analysis from the ground might not necessarily be appropriate, because there's a beautiful library alcove right above number 5 that will see more than where you see on the ground.
Do you want us to go into the school to take the picture?
I'm not suggesting that.
Okay.
I'm gonna throw out there, I'm an
Yeah,
employee
I-
of the school district again, I don't make decisions.
Right.
But I'm
Because that would be the only way to get
intimately
that.
aware of that. I also think we need to consider I have to watch the words I say here, the multi-purpose athletic complex that's being built. There's a whole new structure over there that I think should be considered for viewpoint analysis.
You're talking about on the high school property?
Correct.
Okay.
So I think that before we can even pick where these points are, I think we need to have a realistic conversation of how tall are the buildings, and more than just locations, the cafeteria is entirely glass. What is the visual impact on that? So I think there's a lot to look at on the school district property than just 2 points on the ground.
And I think at least a rough topo with the elevation of the viewpoint is important. So I think viewpoint number 4 is from a relatively low elevation, whereas if you go up to the multi-purpose athletic field above that, you're probably 15 or 20 feet higher. And that's where most of the people are, is up at that complex. just like the cafeteria is the second most highly occupied space inside the high school, that's where the most impact is going to be seen to my viewpoint. So I echo my colleagues' observations on that.
Well, good.
I think so. I think we know what we need to do.
So
you'll resubmit?
May 15th.
Is the next work on
Okay.
June 20th?
And just to remind me, did we just bring
No, you
stuff to?
call of the office?
No, I mean, do we have to submit ahead of time? The
No,
materials,
you
we
bring-
just bring it, but we'll call ahead and make the
You
appointment.
make the appointment, get a time slot, and then bring the materials to the workshop for 4 people.
You can submit beforehand if you'd like.
Oh, okay.
You know, I mean, there's no prohibition against that, but there's no requirement.
Okay, all right.
I would really
With that, I'd like to
advantage of the
approve the
workshop.
consultants, just so that we have, Christina, do you have additional comments? Just okay, Sean, do you have anything?
I don't have anything additional to what Kristen.
Okay, some of the board members may have a few comments, just so that for your edification. I know Amy did, but okay, I'll start with Amy.
So I see the viewpoints that you picked, but I don't see any that are from any of the houses or the homes or like, because there are, it looks like residences along, that could potentially be impacted by this development as well. And I would want to make sure I would include viewpoints from their vantage, point as well.
So we did get the residents to the south. Are you talking about from the north?
Yeah, west, and then also, I don't know what that road is on the image, but it looks like there's houses that could potentially be impacted, could potentially
Do
see.
you mind if I come up and
Sure.
where you're pointing?
Sorry, like along here, did you see these single
Oh,
family homes
okay.
all along here?
Okay, got
That-
it.
And
And
there's
then
also
also
a
on that
historic
side.
home on this side of the road.
So on the
you
other
would-
side of the
Right.
throughway?
You would
Yeah.
want to do that.
Because I would definitely be concerned if I was, I would want to make sure that my view wasn't impacted if I lived in proximity.
Amy, anything else?
No.
Mayor Beth?
I would be, I think we should revisit this when we do find the height of the buildings
Oh,
because,
we will indeed.
yes, because I would
This is just
definitely-
information for discussion purposes. so
Right,
that they
because
have-
I would definitely be thinking of, trestle area and viewpoints from, what do I want to say, even from the from Scunnamunk. And also, I would be thinking of the trail, when the trail goes through, we would want to make sure that doesn't impact any of those locations.
Mr. Chairman, one more question.
Sure.
I'm not looking to open up Pandora's box here, but I noticed there's still access from Dragon Drive. Has there been any updates on that?
Perhaps if they're willing to share, but my understanding is that the zoning board process that was undertaken by the applicant over the status of Dragon Drive, which was denied by the zoning board of appeals, was then, there was an Article 78 challenge in state Supreme Court, and my understanding is that that challenge that the applicant brought has also been dismissed.
With that, Steve? Steve, do you have any comments?
Just that I concur with the consultants and our colleagues, it seems a little premature in selecting viewpoints.
Okay. John?
Okay.
Good? Glenn? Okay.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time.
Well received, and thank you for giving us a preliminary review. Okay, with that, we have no public hearing scheduled. I do have one matter of discussion that relates directly to the project being considered tonight. So we will address that as soon as we're wrapped up here. Okay, with that, in terms of correspondence, I have to say that for the first time ever, every piece of correspondence that I have relates to a single project, which is the hotel project, the proposed hotel project. Stimulated, no doubt, by one particular letter that was read before the town board, I suspect several weeks ago, and I had the I saw the second attempted reading, although I understand there was a first reading of a letter from Mr. Incano. I found the letter a little bit surprising, and I would urge anyone, and those on camera as well, that if you're going to write a letter and refer to a letter from friends and neighbors, that you provide a list of those friends and neighbors. Because in conjunction with that letter, which is not, I'm not sure if it's supportive of the project or not, it's certainly not supportive of the process, but I have a pile of letters which outnumber this letter by about 50 to 1 of letters in support of the project. So I don't know who the friends and neighbors are of the individual writing this particular letter, because all the friends and neighbors that I can think of are already writing positive letters in support of the project. So I would seek some clarification on that for next time. Secondly, and I will turn this over to Dominic in a second, but I do have concerns. Maybe it's my fault for not having previously clarified what a public hearing is. A public hearing is not for the board to inform the public as to the nature of a project, but rather for the public to inform the board as to what their opinion is of the project. And it is, generally speaking, the board or the public that should have an opportunity prior to attending the public hearing to garner what the project is about so that they can provide comments on what they think of the project. I've been on many, many boards, going from the MTA all the way through, dealing with multi-billion-dollar projects, and every single board meeting is to get input from the public and not to provide the public with answers to questions. As a matter of fact, in every other board I've ever been on, we are advised by council not to respond to questions that are raised at public hearings, but rather simply to listen. So for future reference, any letters or comments to the board or the expectations of public hearings should be, you should come fully loaded, you can tell us what you think about the project, you can say anything you want about the project, but I strongly discourage individuals from writing letters that impugn the reputation of individuals involved, either the board members or more specifically consultants. They do an outstanding job. And I think that it's really unfair in a letter to direct personal and professional insults to members of our consulting staff who have done an outstanding job. And I think every member of this board would be in unanimous consent to that. And with that, there is something in the letter that I think maybe Dominic had asked to address.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There's quite a few things in the letter that have been raised previously before the board. The board has been discussing the request for a second public hearing at several meetings now, I think going back to February. So it was discussed in February, March, April, and was dealt with last month. So I'm not going to revisit that, but there is a statement that Mr. Incano made here that he was asking the town board, which by the way, that doesn't have jurisdiction over the planning board. The planning board, you are an independent board. But he was asking that the town board conduct a review of a possible conflict of interest involving the planning board lawyer, dual role, representing the planning board and also serving as a director on the board of the Hudson Valley Economic Development Committee, supporting or sponsoring this hotel project. And it said sponsoring. So a couple of things there. This was an email that got sent around back in January by the Hudson Valley Economic Development Corporation. It was an email that was sent by the director of HVEDC that was providing information that the hotel project has been proposed, that it has received certain grant money, and had also included the latest information regarding the architecturals and support from various different elected officials. You should, and first of all, it is true, I am a director of the Hudson Valley Economic Development Corporation. I am one of, I think the last count was 110. There are 110 directors of the Hudson Valley Economic Development Corporation. And the name is a little bit misleading, because when you hear Economic Development Corporation, many people might initially think, well, this is an organization that gives out incentives, like gives out, maybe it functions like an IDA, maybe there's grant money or tax reductions or those kinds of things. And that is not the case. The Hudson Valley Economic Development Corporation, which serves the Hudson Valley, is solely a place to go for information about pending projects that might be coming that people want to get information out about. And so all this email was an email that provided information about the project that is consistent with everything that has been said here tonight, solely informational purposes only. And as one of 110 board members at HVEDC, I did not know that Mike Oates was sending this email out beforehand. I would not have had a problem with him sending this email out beforehand because I have no financial interest in this whatsoever. HVEDC has no financial interest in this whatsoever. Mr. Perez and his hotel team didn't have to pay for this email. The HVEDC is supported by its board members solely. It's not a membership organization in the sense that you don't have to pay to play. So you don't have to pay any money in order to get the kind of sponsorship, or as Mr. Encano called it, or even just kind of putting the word out that a project is coming that people interested in economic development might want to pay attention to. The town of Cornwall does have a code of ethics which prohibits those from having an interest in the project. An interest is defined, of course, as one that's being either financial or personal to the extent that you would have a bias. I do not have a bias in connection with this. I wasn't involved with sending this email. I didn't know anything about it. And on top of that, as I said, there's no money that's changing hands as a result of this. They don't have to join HVEDC or anything else. It was purely informational. But nonetheless, I wanted to make sure that it was dealt with on the record because an allegation has been made that I've been tainted as a result of this. So I wanted to bring to your attention as well.
Thank you, Dominic. And I should point out, as a member of the planning board and chairman for a really long time, I've been on the board for at least 30 years, and I've never seen a better attorney and provide recommendations such as you do. I've worked with you for 22 years, Dominic, and I would be honest about a possible conflict of interest. And it's insulting when I see that in a publicly readable letter, and a letter that's read to the town board. I feel the same about the other two consultants, and of course, Quinn, I'm sure. We're blessed with we're very fortunate to have the professional advice that we have. So with that, I'd like to bring one more kind of letter to the stage. And that letter was a very irregular letter coming from the Zoning Board of Appeals attorney, I believe. I'm not going to address it because I'm a little perplexed as to the whys and wherefores, because it really doesn't ask for anything. I believe it was an informational letter. But Dominic, I'm going to ask you to address it since I think that it falls in the purview of legal action.
Yes, so the board did receive a letter from Adam Rod, who represents, from my firm, Drake Loeb, who represents the Town of Cornwall Zoning Board of Appeals. As you may recall, this project required certain variances from the Zoning Board of Appeals. The one that's at issue here that's raised in this letter is the front yard setback. The town's GC zoning has certain front yard setbacks that are required, which is actually an interesting topic in and of itself, because for instance, a proposed hotel which falls into use group E within the GC zoning district has a front yard required setback of 35 feet. But if you think about that, and you think about Main Street, that most of the businesses on Main Street are located, like right up against the sidewalk. And the existing Berniger building, of course, is set back already from the sidewalk significantly. In fact, it's set back 29 feet, which is what the applicant was proposing to keep that setback at. But if the variance was required because they needed to provide 35 feet, so they were deficient, correct my math if I'm wrong, but I believe that they were deficient by 6 feet for a new structure in the GC district. And of course, this is the first new structure in the GC district. I mean, certainly in my time representing the planning board, and I can't recall, another new building that's been proposed in that. So the town might want to revisit some of these bulk area requirements, which, but that's a conversation for another day. As near as I can tell, and I haven't had a discussion with Mr. Rod, and I checked on the town's website, and I don't believe that the minutes for the ZBA meeting had been posted yet, so I'm a little bit in the dark, and we only have the letter here, but as near as I can tell from this, that at the zoning board, the applicant had stated that the existing structure was going to remain, and that perhaps the new stories were going to be built on top, or some variation of that, perhaps the front wall was going to remain, and that now, of course, my understanding of the project is that the building is going to be demolished, but the new structure is going to be within the footprint of the existing building. And so Mr. Rod's letter doesn't say that the town board, or excuse me, that the planning board has to do anything in particular in connection with this, but to understand that that was the representation that was made to the ZBA, that, or at least there was an expectation amongst one or more ZBA members that the front wall was going to stay, of the existing Berniker building was going to stay. And they ask you to take that into consideration.
Well, I don't know what consideration needs to be taken in that, in the sense that the building is on the existing
I
footprint.
mean, it's important to clarify that it's still 29 feet,
Yes,
you know, so.
which is further than most buildings on the street.
Correct, I mean, it's further than the Verizon building directly next door, you know, as well as the businesses across the street, are all located, you know, closely or directly adjacent to the sidewalk along Main
But-
Street. But in any event, you know, at the end of the day, from my perspective, and of course I defer to the board, is that the applicant received a variance for 29 feet for their front yard setback. And they're staying within that 29 feet, so they're not increasing any kind of deformities, or non-conformity rather.
Well, we have, the town has a very competent, if not annoying, building inspector who is perfectly capable of measuring footage.
That was a compliment there.
So I feel quite comfortable in the context of the variances granted and the fact that nothing has significantly changed from the footprint of the original building. That can be discussed as we consider the resolution. If there are questions amongst the board based on that explanation, we'll be open to that discussion.
So, Mr. Chairman, it might be beneficial to also say at this time that structural detailing for the construction of the hotel is not within the purview of this board. So this board, as part of this review, has not undertaken an engineering review of things like foundations or the bedding materials for sewer lines or all of the fire compliance things which we'll rely on our building inspector for. So this board's review is for the site layout and for site compliance. The specifics of the building plans and the structural plans will fall to our building inspector. Additionally, we have talked many times, Mr. Chairman, about architectural review being a specific duty of this board, and at this time, we do not have a mandate from the town board to undertake such architectural review in detail for structures along this section of Main Street. Given the importance of Main Street, I will once again say aloud that it would make sense to me if from the Quaker Meeting House to at least Town Hall, if not all the way to Rings Pond, along Main Street, there was some provision for this board to undertake architectural review as a regular part of our duties. Many other municipalities choose that route. Our municipality thus far has chosen not to take that route. I bring both these things up because members of the public have approached me, hey, what about the structural details of the building, the existing frame, all of this? That's the building inspector. People have also approached me about architectural review, and my answer to that is some towns undertake that as a regular part of the planning board review. This planning board does not have a specific subcommittee or piece of town code which obligates us to undertake that architectural review.
Which brings us to the essential purpose of the planning board, which is to make sure that proposed projects are in compliance with town code. We don't decide whether something should be pretty, or we like it or don't like it. If a project is in compliance with the town code, we're able to move that project forward. And we take that role very seriously, do we not? So with that, I will move to the next stage of this discussion, and that is where we left off the last time. To bring everyone up to date, the last meeting, at Mr. President's request, we stopped the meeting and we stopped consideration because he personally requested that we have a full board, as full board as possible, present to consider the resolution. Unfortunately, Mr. Avis is a little bit ill, but he's getting better, and I'm grateful for that. But we have the addition of Mr. Drabeck, who can competently make decisions as well as anybody here. So we are in a position where we can discuss the resolution, and I can ask for a motion on a resolution, following which I will ask for discussion. So this is not a final thing, but if I could ask for a motion on the resolution, which is where I left off last time, we can proceed.
Were we gonna read the resolution?
I am, but I need a motion.
So moved.
That's a move. I'm going to ask one question, once we have a motion, I'm going to ask Mr. Critisco to read the resolution, which will answer all the questions you could possibly have, because the resolution is one of the better and more prepared and more thorough explanations of what
I
this
would
project
ask to
is.
have the motion, to have the resolution tabled until after discussion.
Accepted, okay, we'll table it, and I'll ask for a, I won't have it no, we'll have a motion and then discussion, but I will ask Dominic to read the resolution first, so that everyone is well informed, and any questions for discussion can come from the, and I apologize, I did it backwards. So with that, Dominic, would you kindly, also, Dominic, you do have license for replication to edit and shorten it a little bit, because I don't want to sit here with 22 pages of boring legalese. But I thought you could give us a pretty good overview.
You
I
know,
thought it was riveting.
all right. So this is a resolution of conditional final site plan, as well as amended site plan and special permit approval for the Cornwall Hotel, the Hotel Cornwall. And it was brought by the applicant, which owns property located at 317 Main Street. It's designated on the tax map as lot 24-2-5.1, and that is prevalently improved by a mostly vacant commercial building. The applicant has proposed to demolish the existing commercial building and replace it with a proposed 5-story hotel and patio area and related amenities, including a restaurant and bar, to be known as the Hotel Cornwall. The project requires both site plan and special permit approval from the Town of Cornwall Planning Board. The application also required variances for certain bulk area requirements, including lot area, front yard setback, and maximum development coverage, which area variances were granted by the Town of Cornwall Zoning Board of Appeals. Following the adoption of a secret negative declaration on July 1st, 2024, and to allow for the applicant to pursue other necessary approvals for the project, including grant applications for financial assistance, the Planning Board granted preliminary site plan approval for the project on July 1st, 2024. At that time, the Planning Board deferred consideration of the special permit approval, given that no operator for the proposed hotel had yet been identified, along with outstanding proposed architectural details and signage for the project, all of which the applicant must have addressed prior to seeking conditional site plan and special permit approval from the Planning Board. The applicant has submitted these additional details and has now requested that the Planning Board grant both conditional final site plan approval and special permit approval. In its proposed final plan set, the applicant has modified certain details of the project, including increasing seating in the restaurant, the provision of additional off-street parking spaces, and proposed final architectural details, which I'm referring to herein as the proposed final plans. To address the additional parking demand that this increased seating would otherwise require to be provided or waived by the Planning Board, the applicant has offered to construct additional off-street parking on an adjacent lot identified as tax lot 2.12, which is owned by 325 Main Street Holdings, LLC, an affiliated company of the applicant. The applicant has amended its application to include a site plan amendment for the use of lot 2.12 for parking. I'm going to skip over the property involved because we just went through that in a sense. Zoning. The property affected by this resolution is located on the Main Street corridor in the general commercial zoning district. For lot 5.1, hotels are permitted by special permit subject to use group E and the requirements of section 158-21E of the zoning code. Restaurants are a permitted accessory use to hotels. In regards to the proposed sharing parking on lot 2.12, parking is a permitted accessory use in the GC zoning district, subject only to site plan amendment. Plans and materials, I'll skip over these because these are what part of the town's official file. Application history. The application for special permit and site plan approval for the hotel and restaurant was made on or about November 23rd, 2022. The applicant has revised and updated its plans and materials since that time to address comments and concerns expressed by the planning board, its consultants, and input from the public, both during the public hearing and submitted in writing throughout the board's consideration of the project. Meetings. The planning board reviewed and considered the project at the following meetings: December 5th, 2022, January 3rd, 2023, May 1st, 2023, June 5th of 23, October 2nd of 23, January 2nd of 24, May 6th of 24, June 3rd of 24, July 1st of 24, September of 24, October 7th of 24, March 3rd, 2025, April 7th, 2025, and May 5th, 2025. The meetings of the planning board are open to the public and are also live streamed online, thanks to Oscar, and made available for later viewing. The project was also reviewed at numerous monthly technical workshops held by the planning board's consultants, which technical workshops are posted and open to the public. The mandatory public hearing on the special permit and site plan was duly held and closed on June 3rd, 2024. For seeker, this is an unlisted action under the State Environmental Quality Review Act. The planning board conducted a coordinated review for the project. The planning board adopted a seeker negative declaration on July 1st, 2024. Variances. The project as proposed required certain area variances for lot area, front yard setback, and maximum development coverage, which variances the planning board referred to the Zoning Board of Appeals on June 3rd, 2023. Subsequently, the Zoning Board of Appeals reviewed and considered the request for the area variances, and after holding a public hearing, granted the variances on August 21st, 2023. Preliminary site plan approval. To allow for the applicant to pursue other necessary approvals for the project, including grant applications for financial assistance, the Town of Cornwall Planning Board adopted a resolution granting preliminary site plan approval for the project on July 1st, 2025. Proposed final site plans and site plan amendment for Lot 2.12. As a result of this plan modifications prepared by the applicant as part of the proposed final plans and submitted prior to this conditional final approval resolution, the Planning Board reviewed these modifications and on April 7, 2025, adopted an amended negative declaration finding that there would be no significant impacts associated with the project as amended to include additional off-site parking on Lot 2.12. As discussed below, the Planning Board further determined at the April 7, 2025 meeting to waive the discretionary public hearing for the site plan amendment for Lot 2.12. Written public comments. Consistent with the board's custom and practice, the Planning Board accepted written public comment throughout the application process, both before and after the public hearing, including up to the date of the adoption of this approval resolution. The Planning Board received and considered all written comments made by the public, as well as comments from members of the Town Board and Zoning Board of Appeals, and comments that were submitted anonymously. The request for a second public hearing. Beginning in February 2025, the Board received requests to conduct a second public hearing based on the proposed final plans, including the provision of additional off-street parking on Lot 2.12. which was intended to lessen the demand for parking on Main Street, and updated architectural drawings for the hotel, for which the Planning Board has limited architectural review authority pursuant to sections 158.20.1 and 158.21E9. The Planning Board considered the matter at its February, March, and April 2025 meetings. The Board's counsel advised that the overall proposed use of the site was not different in kind. In other words, hotels and restaurants with associated, with associated amenities from the project as presented at the June 3rd, 2024 public hearing, and that a second public hearing was not authorized under the provisions of the Town of Cornwall zoning law, which only references a single public hearing per project. At the board's April 7th, 2025 meeting, the board considered a motion to hold a second public hearing for the project, including for the site plan amendment for the use of lot 2.12, which motion was not passed by a majority of the board. Waiver of the site plan amendment public hearing. For the amended site plan application for the use of lot 2.12 for accessory parking, the planning board hereby waives the discretionary public hearing, given that, considered on its own, the use of lot 2.12 for additional off-street parking in the Main Street General Commercial Corridor is a permitted accessory use within the GC zoning district, is consistent with the town's May 22nd, 2019 comprehensive plan update, which referenced the need for additional off-street parking in the Main Street corridor, and that the site plan amendment to increase parking spaces on lot 2.12 constitutes a benefit to the surrounding commercial uses and does not warrant a second public hearing. Prior environmental contamination. As identified in the EAF for the project, and as commented on by several members of the public, the project site was listed in the New York State DEC Spills Incident Database as spill ID number 1801592. The DEC closed the spill on October 22nd, 2020. The records and data indicated that the necessary cleanup and removal actions have been completed and no further remedial activities are necessary. The town of Cornwall does not regulate the remediation of environmental contamination. In the event that any evidence of additional soil contamination is discovered during construction, the applicant, including any successors and assigns or those acting on its behalf, will comply with all mandated reporting requirements and contact the DEC and follow all DEC required procedures. The applicant shall simultaneously notify the town building inspector, including all subsequent communications with the DEC, to ensure that the town remains informed of any such additional remediation that may be required. County Planning Referral. The Planning Board referred this application to the Orange County Planning Department for its review pursuant to New York General Municipal Law, Section 239. On May 2nd, 2024, the Planning Department responded with a request for additional information, which additional information was provided. Following the submission of additional information, the Orange County Planning Department issued its 239 report recommending a local determination to the Planning Board on June 4th, 2023. Thereafter, due to adjustments to the proposed project, the Planning Board re-referred this matter to the Orange County Planning Department for further review. The Orange County Planning Department issued a second 239 report on June 12th, 2024, again recommending a local determination. Parking waiver. At the time that the application was made, the Town of Cornwall zoning law authorized the Planning Board to exercise its discretion to waive up to 30% of the required off-street parking. The applicant requested that the Planning Board exercise its discretion and waive 30% of the required off-street parking for the project. And in support of its request, the applicant provided both traffic and parking studies to the Board for its consideration. The Board was assisted in the review of these studies by the Board's traffic consultant, Philip Greeley. Based on the initial calculation of the required parking, and based on the nature of the subject application and concurrence by the town's consulting traffic engineer, the Planning Board previously found that a significant portion of the restaurant and bar guests are likely to be also hotel guests, and therefore not require additional parking. On June 5th, 2023, the Planning Board granted the initial parking waiver of 30%, allowing for a reduction from 75 parking spaces to 53 parking spaces. Thereafter, the Town Board amended Section 158.16.1A, the waiver provisions in the town zoning law, which now provides as follows. In conjunction with site plan approval, non-residential uses which are located within the Main Street Business District, Main Street between the traffic circle and Willow Avenue, shall be entitled to a waiver of up to 100% of the parking requirements, where the applicant demonstrates, based on a written narrative and analysis and/or documented shared parking agreement, that the parking demand requested to be waived can be accommodated off-site within 500 feet of the building for which the waiver is requested. Since that time, the applicant has increased the bar and restaurant seating to 112 seats, which increases the total parking requirement to 100 parking spaces. The applicant increased the number of provided off-street parking from 53 to 70 spaces. This offset amounts to a 30% reduction in the number of required parking spaces for the project, which is consistent with the previous 30% waiver granted by the Planning Board on June 5th, 2023. Although the Planning Board is now authorized to waive up to 100% of the required off-street parking for the project, such a waiver has not been requested by the applicant, and the overall waiver percentage remains the same as previously granted by the Planning Board. The town's May 22nd, 2019 comprehensive plan update specifically recommended for the Main Street corridor an evaluation of existing parking standards with a view to reducing the required parking based on current needs for specific uses and to promote shared parking. The Planning Board thus hereby reaffirms its parking waiver of 30%, requiring 70 off-street parking spaces for the project as currently presented. Should any changes be proposed subsequent to this approval that would require an adjustment to this parking waiver, the applicant must apply for that to the Planning Board for such adjustment. The Planning Board grants the requested waiver conditioned on the applicant preparing and implementing a valet parking program, as well as a post-opening traffic and parking study as detailed below. The Planning Board reserves the right to review the post-opening parking conditions and impose additional mitigation measures if the Planning Board determines that such additional measures are needed. I'm only about halfway through.
Yeah,
And so if that's the
It's
case.
very enjoyable listening to this, Tom.
Well, thank you. I'm sure I'm putting you all to sleep. But in any event, the findings, perhaps, I could skip through these. I mean, the findings.
The findings have been discussed during board meetings.
They have, and these are consistent with the special permit requirements. For instance, that all proposed structures, equipment, and material are readily accessible to fire and police protection. The proposed use is of such a location, size, and character that in general it will be in harmony with the appropriate and orderly development of the district. The location and size of the use, the nature and intensity of operations involved in or connected in its site layout in relation to the access streets are such that both pedestrian and vehicular access to and from the use and assembly of persons will not be hazardous or inconvenient to or incongruous with the conflict of the normal traffic of the neighborhood. The location and height of the buildings, the location, nature, and height of any walls and fences, although none are proposed, and the nature and extent of landscaping on the site are such that the use will not hinder or discourage appropriate development and use of adjacent lands or buildings. The impact of the proposed use shall not engender avoidable impacts upon the environment of the site or the adjacent lands, and such impacts will be the minimum necessary to accommodate the proposed use, and further that there shall be no affected unique ecological or environmental assets. The project also meets the specific requirements set forth in the zoning law section 15821E regarding hotels, and the fact that the hotel units shall not contain kitchen facilities of any nature. Hotel units shall not contain more than 2 rooms and shall not be connected by interior doors in groups of more than 2. An accommodation unit shall not be occupied by more than 4 adults at any one time. There shall be no more than 1 hotel accommodation unit for each 400 square feet of the site area. Each hotel room shall have an area of at least 240 square feet, and a hotel unit containing both bath and closet facilities shall not be less than 300 square feet. The accessory uses are permitted, although they're not necessarily proposed. For instance, there is one house or an apartment with or without kitchen facilities for use as a hotel manager, but my understanding is that that is not being proposed. The rest, it is allowed, however, under the code. The restaurants is an allowed accessory use, an office and lobby, and as well as meeting and conference rooms. The Hotel Cornwall will be new construction in the GC district where there have been no new buildings constructed for decades. As noted in the town's comprehensive plan update from 2019, the Main Street corridor has a diverse range of architectural styles, with a wide variety of architectural styles and materials, including existing structures in need of maintenance. Given the above, the planning board finds that the exterior treatment, including colors, textures, and materials of the project, are muted to the extent appropriate for the surrounding uses in the Main Street corridor, and blend into the surrounding landscape and adjacent land uses to the extent appropriate, consistent with the wide variety of existing styles and conditions of the surrounding structures, as well as lighting throughout the area shall not exceed 1.5-foot candles at ground level. Now therefore, the planning board resolves to grant conditional final site plan special permit approval for the Hotel Cornwall site plan and special permit application and the Lot 2.12 site plan amendment, as said proposals depicted on the plans. The conditions, and since most of these are standard, I will buzz through these if you would like. Required plan revisions is a standard condition contained in almost every approval resolution that requires any final plan revisions to the extent of the consultants. The applicant shall revise the landscaping plan to specify all species proposed, and shall also note that no invasive species shall be planted. Prior to the signing of the site plan, the applicant should provide a revised construction sequencing plan to the satisfaction of the town engineer. Prior to signing of the site plan, the applicant should provide pedestrian protection from vehicles at all exterior doors satisfactory to the town engineer. The applicant shall protect the exterior mounted mechanical equipment from vehicles, and the applicant shall add that proposed building finishes on the architectural renderings. Outside agency approvals are required. The applicant shall secure all necessary permits, approvals, and authorizations from all other agencies, including the Orange County Department of Public Works for the connection to the stormwater collection system in the water main in Main Street, as well as for the site driveway modifications connecting to Main Street, and the Village of Cornwall and Hudson for the proposed modifications to the public water supply system. Easements. Prior to signing of the site plan, the applicant shall submit drafts of the proposed easements required for the project, which actually they have already done, which easements shall be reviewed by the planning board engineer and planning board attorney, which hasn't happened yet. Upon their approval, the applicant must record the easements in the Orange County Clerk's Office and prove the same provided to the town. Parking. Prior to the signing of the site plan, the applicant shall prepare and submit a valet parking protocol for anticipated peak usage of the restaurant and bar, which protocol shall be reviewed and approved by the board's consultants and implemented by the applicant upon opening of the hotel. The applicant shall monitor both on-site and off-site parking usage following the opening of the hotel and shall prepare and submit a report regarding same, the post-opening parking report, to the planning board within 4 weeks following the 6-month anniversary of the opening of the hotel and restaurant to the public. The planning board and its consultants shall review the post-opening parking report and may require the applicant to implement additional measures to alleviate off-site parking impacts. This condition specifically relates to the special permit hearing granted for the project. Non-compliance with this condition constitute grounds for the planning board to modify or rescind the special permit approval for the project. The applicant shall remove snow from the site as needed. Purdy's Lane. Purdy's Lane is a private road owned by other parties who have the right to use Purdy's Lane to access their property. For the construction phase of the project, the applicant shall provide to the town the written consent of any party that has legal access to utilize Purdy's Lane to allow the applicant to temporarily restrict such access for a limited period during construction, which the applicant has already done. The applicant shall maintain the entire length of Purdy's Lane from Main Street to Clinton Street in a passable condition at all times, including snow removal, pothole repair, and paving as necessary. At any time, either during or post-construction, the code enforcement officer may direct the applicant to repair or repave Purdy's Lane if, in his opinion, its condition warrants such action. A note to that effect shall be added to the site plan. Failure to comply with this condition shall constitute a violation of the site plan and shall be enforceable by the code enforcement officer. We then have standard conditions regarding outdoor fixtures and amenities, basically only that what is shown on the plan can be constructed, and as well as the final signage plan has to be submitted to the building inspector and code enforcement officer for his review. And noting that no monument sign has been proposed or approved as part of this application. If one would be to be so proposed, it would require an amended approval before the board. Limitation of use is important, that this approval is for the demolition of the existing commercial building, the replacement with a proposed 5-story hotel with related amenities. Like, nothing else can occur here. This is not a proposal for one building and then it changes to a different type of use. Should any site plan or interior changes be proposed subsequent to the approval that require an adjustment to the parking waiver, and as we mentioned below, or above rather, then the applicant shall be required to return to the planning board for an amended approval. The hotel shall be utilized for transient stays only. No guest shall be permitted any length of stay in excess of 30 days, and a note to that effect shall be added to the site plan. Failure to comply with this condition shall constitute a violation of the site plan and shall be enforceable by the code enforcement officer. Any change in use or changes to the hotel operator or operational details, including but not limited to hours of operation of the restaurant and bar, shall require an amended special permit approval from the planning board. The seeker mitigation measures that were outlined in the seeker amended negative declaration that you adopted at last month's meeting shall also be abided by the applicant. Environmental cleanup, as I mentioned earlier, and I'm not going to read the entire thing again, that if any soil contamination is discovered during construction, that has to be reported to the DEC and simultaneously reported to the town. Just to be clear, again, to emphasize the town does not regulate it, but to keep the board informed and the public informed, then the town will have that information.
I should point out, Dominic, you know from where you speak, having been a former attorney for the DEC.
I didn't have any gray hair then.
Yeah.
Variance decision compliance required. The applicant shall comply with the terms and conditions of the Zoning Board of Appeals decision which granted the variances for the project. And successors and assigns, this approval shall be binding on the applicant, the site owner, the hotel operator, and any and all successors and assigns. So anyone who comes afterwards has to abide by all these conditions. And lastly, there is a condition that they have to pay fees before the site plan shall be signed. That would be the fees that would be owed to the town for its ongoing review of this project, as well as very detailed explanation of the expiration of the approval. As we've mentioned before, the town of Cornwall has very particular requirements as it relates to site plan approval, that site plans, once they are granted, the applicant has essentially 1 year to obtain a building permit for the project. The applicant is obviously asking for site plan approval at this time. There have been other projects where projects have been reviewed, such as the Cornwall Commons project, but then they weren't ready to start that 1 year clock, so they never asked for site plan approval. But here we have an applicant that's asking for it, but we just make sure that they understand that they have an obligation to get a building permit within 1 year.
We understand that.
And that's it.
Thank you very much. And as a requirement for wall boards, do they require you to read the Brothers Karamazov line?
Town Fishkill likes it, which,
Very good, very well done. And
well,
very,
thank you all for your patience.
very well prepared resolution, Dominic. I think that covers every possible base. I'll ask for a motion.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Discussion. Is there any discussion amongst the board?
Any discussion from our consultants?
We've heard from the consultants, but if you would like to ask for it, that's fine.
I don't have anything further.
They've substantially addressed my comments.
Thank you.
I do have just a few questions from the resolution and from reviewing our packet. My one question is, where are the parking spaces with 15 to 30-minute time limits for guests that were checking into the hotel?
I'm sorry, could you say that again?
Where are the parking spaces with the 15, 30-minute limits for guests checking into the hotel? We had discussed that at a previous meeting, and I don't see it on the map, right? We were concerned about how the guests were going to check in and where they were going to park, since there wasn't parking right in front of the building. And it was discussed that it was going to be made available across from the entrance. And when I look at the plan, I don't see anything marked here.
Was that included in the mitigation?
None.
As far as I know, it's not a formal requirement, but it was something we did talk about, I remember. I think it could be addressed with simple signage.
So I didn't see it in the resolution and I don't see it on the map. So I wanted to ask that question.
Would you like to respond?
I don't believe that it is on the map.
Okay.
I don't remember us adopting it as a requirement, but instead as a request.
We have a resolution on the table. That is a comment by a board member. It does not necessarily mean that the resolution has to be changed. We can read the resolution and vote on it, since I have a motion on the floor.
I do have just a few additional
Okay.
questions. My other question is, where are the vehicles going to park when snowfall exceeds 2 inches and there's no parking on the public streets? It's not permitted. So I do have that question. I don't think that's ever been answered. I believe I asked that previously. So is there an answer at this time?
We have the parking spaces shown on the map. And I understand that the town has rules for Main Street. Those are not the rules of this parking lot. And we're gonna be very proactive with our snow removal. So,
Yeah, the parking utilization study that was provided showed that there's only on Friday and Saturday nights were times when the parking was anticipated to exceed what is provided on the site. So it wouldn't be, it's not a scenario where every day they will require on-street parking. I mean, someone
I
may
was
choose
just
to
asking
park there.
for snow removal.
Sure.
It was discussed about parking on Main Street, so
So I think it's an ongoing issue that should be addressed by the town long-term. I'm hopeful that the current ongoing comprehensive plan effort, which I believe, Amy, you're sitting on that action, will address this. I mean, it's an issue for literally every single resident, whether a rental property or, you know, or Shamrocks or whoever. I mean, they all rely on-street parking to operate, and we, as a town, I think, owe it to those Main Street businesses to come up with a long-term plan for alleviating that.
Yeah.
So I agree with your concern, Beth, but I don't see it as being unique to this particular business, but instead something which is endemic to our central business district.
And as duly noted, Amy, representing us on the comprehensive committee, will make sure that that's discussed.
Absolutely.
Okay, very good.
also a question in regard to, have we received a letter from the Canterbury Fire District for their findings of the fire lanes in excess as acceptable?
We've
I
not,
looked
but-
through the packet, I did not see
We've
it.
not, but I've discussed it with Gary, and he takes no exception to the lanes.
And also, my question is about lot 212. So 212 has, and I know I brought this up a few months ago, in regard to the placement of the dumpsters there for the hotel. And now we're placing a parking lot there for the hotel. So I'm just wondering, as a separate lot, it is a separate lot, is there review by this planning board to look further into that lot? There is not a public hearing. You put it in the resolution that it's being waived. The board hadn't determined that in regard to this lot. That did not apply to the vote that we took last month, because that was for both lots. So I'm just questioning that. In regard to that, I'm also questioning, when you look at the map, it has on that lot it currently has a single-family house on it, which the property is zoned commercial, and it doesn't allow for that at this time for that current residential use. So how is that being addressed?
Well, the residential use is there, it's an existing, it can be existing
It's
non-conforming in the
non-conforming,
district, yeah.
but is there anything, any plan to be able to address that as a non-conforming use, or is that being changed
Mayor, I think
inside
Sue, for
the?
interrupting, but I'm not sure how that relates directly to the resolution that's on the table, if I'm incorrect.
I guess I'm asking about the project in general for the resolution, because that was not included. It was touched on, but it was not, there was no response in regard to the process of handling that or addressing it.
Okay. Well, I'm sure that the hotel will address it. Again, that's not a matter for the consideration in the resolution. I think that all issues, and Gary is the enforcement officer and will see to it, I'm sure, will you not, Gary? That all rules are enforced related to. Thank you.
Well, I guess I'm looking at it that it is a project that would be reviewed, and we would review every aspect of it and every lot of it. So that's why I'm bringing that up and asking the question. You know, it wasn't discussed for contamination on that lot. That lot really has not been totally reviewed before this board. The one lot has, but the other one was not addressed. So that's why, that's why I asked that.
That's good. You're allowed to ask any questions you want. Do you have other questions?
The safeguard in the resolution that Dominic read would include, if there are safeguards in place to where if there's disturbance and any type of evidence of soil staining or any type of other contamination is observed, there is a protocol in place that would need to be enacted. So it's not as if they needed to look in every part of the lot. There's a protocol in place to where if soil staining or other contamination is found, that there is a plan in place.
It has to be reported to the DEC within 2 hours.
Right, and we've included additional safeguards in that it has to be reported to the town as well. That's in addition to state law.
Correct.
And of course, there's always that community question, which is where in the zoning does it say you can't have another public hearing? And
I'm sorry, but we
Yeah.
voted that we weren't holding a second public hearing. It's inappropriate in consideration of the resolution that you raised that question. We voted last meeting that we weren't going to have.
Well, this could even apply for the single
It
lot
does, indeed.
because it does say that it's being waived in the
Part of the resolution,
resolution.
and if you choose to vote no, you can.
But that's not what I'm saying.
Doesn't matter, you can vote no.
But all I was
I can
questioning is the motion that was made was for both lots.
That's
So
okay.
there was
Your
not one
question
for
is
the
duly
other.
noted, and you can vote no on the
So
resolution if you
that's
so
fine,
choose.
I'm just asking the question.
Okay, I have a motion from Mr. Hines, a second from Mr. Drabek. I'll call the roll. Mary Beth, and you've asked for a vote by
Yes.
Hausman, okay?
And at this time, I will abstain because I feel that there's too many questions that are unanswered in regard to this project.
Okay, Mary, okay, Amy?
I am a yes.
Amy is a yes. Steve?
Yes.
Steve? Drabek is a yes. I will write yes.
No.
John is a, the rest is abstain. And Mr. Klasky?
I'm a yes?
Okay, and I am a yes. So that would say 4 votes, and Dominic, did 4 votes constitute a quorum of the full board, even though Mr. Graves is not here?
Yes, it does.
The resolution is passed, and I will sign it and forward it to appropriate people. Thank you very much. Dominic, you signal me, yes?
What's that?
Yeah, I can give this to you.
Actually, it's this version that I read that you should.
Yes, I think I have that. Okay. Thank you very much.
Board and its consultants.
I will move that we adjourn.
Thank you, Dominic.
You're welcome.
Second. Okay, with that, thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Very much.